morning. Good morning. Brothers and sisters, we have with us another one of those great programs that I have been anxious to see and to hear. We have Sister Evandra. I'm not pronouncing your name correct. Ivana, Ivana, tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you are with the movement that came out of the Million Man March movement in 1995, when there was a Million Man March in Washington, D.C. And the pledge was for all Black men to go back to their communities and begin to organize. And one of the organizing groups out in Phoenix, Arizona. You're in Phoenix, correct?
Yes, where it's hot.
Okay. Is the group that Sister Ivana is working with. So tell us a little bit about yourself and that group, and then we get in today's program, which is, I guess you would call it racism in medicine. So we're going to talk about that today with Sister Ivana. Sister Ivana, glad to have you on today, and it's yours.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Clemson. I'm always excited to be on Transatlantic Production. So this is a good thing for me this morning. And so I'm going to be talking about nutritional racism today. But before I start to address what Clemson just brought up, the Phoenix Local Organizing Committee, I do work with them. And then I'm also do work with the UNIA ACL. In my community space. I do have a PhD in special education policy. And so in my 9 to 5 space, I'm educating and advocating for policy that impacts children birth to 8 years old. And so the reason for today's topic is because of the research that I see in our young Black children between birth to 8 years old, how the education system are treating them based on their development. And a lot of this development is tied to nutritional racism and food oppression, which is what I plan on talking about today. So yeah. So Clemson, did you want me just to go on, or did you want to jump back in?
No, I wanted you to go on and give you all the time.
Definitely. So as we all know, last month, March, was Women's History Month. And so the topic on nutritional racism and food oppression is born out of the fact that these issues significantly impact mothers of childbearing age, pregnant mothers, and then Black babies up until the age of 2. And the information I'm discussing today, the ancestor Amos Wilson wrote about this in his book, The Developmental Psychology of the Black Child. So if you want to dig deeper into this topic, I would highly suggest that you read Amos Wilson's Developmental Psychology of the Black Child. And what the ancestor Amos Wilson said was that we here in America assume that what is good for the white child is equally good for the Black child in the context of nutrition and food. And what he also stated was that a large percentage of Black potential is destroyed in the wombs of Black mothers as a result of the Black condition in America. Now, Clemson, that's some pretty strong words that Amos said. I'm going to repeat that one more time. He said that a large percentage of Black potential, African potential, it gets destroyed in the wombs of Black mothers. And that is a result of the Black condition in America. And that Black condition is nutritional racism and food oppression. And so why does this impact us, or how does this impact us? First, we'll talk about 2 things: infant mortality and maternal mortality. Infant mortality rate is one of the strongest indicators of the overall health of a society or a nation. And so this one indicator basically tells the overall health of Black and African people in the US, but particularly all over this globe. So the infant mortality rate, it is the number of deaths every 1,000 live births. So every one infant that dies for every 1,000 live born infants is what the infant mortality rate is. And families that live in poverty and that are Black often have an infant mortality rate that's 2 or 3 times higher than the national average. And so for Black children, the national infant mortality rate is 10 deaths. Well, actually, it's 10.8. So 11 deaths, 11 Black babies die for every 1,000 Black babies that are born. So what does that look like compared to white babies? It's half. White babies are dying at about 5 per 1,000 live births, and the national average sits at 5.6. So Black babies, it's 11. So we are double the national average, and we're double the white average. That is the infant mortality rate for Black children. Now, when we look at the maternal mortality rate, the maternal mortality rate is the number of mothers who die within the first 42 days of pregnancy. So either during childbirth or up to 42 days after. It is the number of mothers who die per 100,000 live births. So infant was 1,000, mothers is 100,000. So there's about 700 women a year in the U.S. that die. That's about 17 deaths on average per 100,000 births on mothers. But for Black mothers, it is 42%. I mean, not percent. I'm sorry. It's 42 deaths. 42 Black mothers die for every 100,000 Black mothers that give birth. And I heard your reaction to that, Clemson.
Yes, I did. What's an environment that causes that?
Right. And that is exactly what I'm going into next. I'm going to talk about the things that actually cause this, and it's partly nutritional racism. So when we look at that maternal mortality rate, and we see that it's an average of 17 amongst this U.S., and that the number for Black women is 42. And for white women, it's 13. And the white women rate is significantly lower than the national average. So the number of mothers that are dying are Black, it's 42 deaths per 100,000. So it's absolutely insane what is happening not only to our Black babies, but also to our Black mothers. And if our Black mothers cannot survive childbirth, then that leaves our Black babies without their mothers. So let me get into your question, Clemson, and talk about sort of what causes this.
Thank you.
The research is very dated. Like I said, the ancestor Amos Wilson wrote about this. And essentially, the nutritional value that the U.S. says that we need to develop is based on the middle-class European child. So if you need 2,000 calories per day as a European child, African baby likely needs about 2,100 or 2,050 calories. I'm giving arbitrary numbers, but the research shows that African babies and mothers need a significant amount more nutritional value during these points in life, because the development of the African child exceeds that of the European child by greatly exceeds it. It's probably twice as fast. And what that means is that between the time of conception and the time of birth, that African baby is developing in ways that are much faster, developing such as their tissue is developing faster, their bone structure is developing faster, their heart is developing faster, their brain, their lungs, etc. And so the mother of these children need a significantly amount more nutrition to handle this. Secondly to that, when the child is born, from birth to age 2, the diet that children are on is still a European, is based on European developmental patterns of European children. But what the research shows is that an African child between birth to 2 grows probably at 60% faster rate than a European baby. So to put that in today's context, in today's language, Black babies basically develop much quicker than white babies. It's just developmental, it's genetic, and it's not anything that is wrong. It's just that we need to feed it. And so the nutritional value in the United States doesn't feed the Black baby. And so what we will find is that the body forms based off of the value of the diet that you're receiving. And so when we look at the food chart, Clemson, we have the US food chart, and then we have like an African diet food chart. And because you have traveled the continent before, I'm sure you can attest to what I'm about to say here. But in the United States, the base of the pyramid are like grains and cereals and pretty much like complex carbs and sugars is what the base of the pyramid is in the United States for nutrition. But in Africa, the base of the pyramid is beans, peas, grains, fruits, nuts, vegetables, collard greens. That is the base of every meal in Africa. And so, Clemson, I know you've eaten a lot of African cuisines, and I imagine they look much different. You don't just have a piece of meat on one section, a starch on another section, and then a vegetable, right? I imagine that your food, when you ate it in Africa, it was a plate of every food group at those meals that you had. Is that correct?
For the most part, yes.
Right. And so what we find on a European diet is that we don't have the base of what an African diet consists of. And when I say the base, it means that every meal that we eat should include these as a base. So we're not even talking about meats yet, right? We're not even talking about the sugars.
Hold on, Evandra. Darrell, now we were interrupted a little while back. Should Sister Evandra go back to the point where we were not interrupted so there'll be a consistency when we edit? How far back should she go? I know we were talking, this is before we started talking about the variety of foods and how that affects our children's development. And so can you kind of, I hate this is happening, but we had a bad connection here with the Wi-Fi. Can you go back and begin talking about Amos' study and what it shows in terms of why and the nutritional value in our environment is different and our children need more? You have to go back to that point and begin again. I'm sorry.
No, perfectly fine. So the research and the findings that the ancestor Amos Wilson put out is that the African child develops at a significantly faster rate than white children. And so when you have the growth chart for our mothers and fathers and others that are part of this process and have experienced it, you take your child to the pediatrician and they'll tell you your child is in the 50th percentile for height or 90th percentile for weight. And then they'll also give you a certain number of centimeters of your child's head circumference. And these indicators are determine the developmental pattern of a child over time. And so what Brother Amos was able to see is that these percentiles for African children were much higher than they were for European children, indicating that the developmental patterns of an African baby are at a much faster rate. They achieve things much faster. And it's actually beyond development, Clemson. It goes into even fine motor skills and things like that develop much quicker in African babies. And so because of this, African babies and Black mothers need a significant amount of more nutritional value, nutrients in their diets. And this isn't just during pregnancy in those first 2 years of life. It's the most crucial then, but we actually need this diet every day. And this is why Black people in America in general die from things such as heart disease, stroke, and high blood pressure, because we are on a European diet and we're not on an African-based diet.
Let me ask you this. Can you give us a picture or an idea of when you say that Black babies develop quicker than European babies? Do you mean they are able to stand, walk, hold their head up, do things like that quicker
Yes.
than European babies?
That's
Explain.
exactly what I'm saying. Yes, that as well as just overall general development too of the body, the bone structure, the brain, the rest of the functioning systems too. Those develop faster. But what that looks like for what the examples you just provided, yes, that means that Black babies are holding their heads up faster, they're sitting up faster, they have better motor skills faster, they're walking faster, things like that happens. This would be the case, however, Clemson, if these African babies was getting an African diet. So what you will find in the US is that you might not see these patterns as clear, but if you were to look at African babies on the continent and compare those to European babies, not in America, but in Europe, you will see these patterns are real, that Black babies are developing faster. And the research actually refers to Black babies with the word precocious. And I don't know if you've ever heard of the word, or any of you all that are watching, but a Black baby specifically is referred to as a precocious child, which means that they develop and have abilities that are far beyond the average.
Okay. All right. Please continue.
Yeah, definitely. So let me get back to the pyramid. So the food pyramids in the US, the base of the food pyramid consists of pretty much complex carbohydrates. It consists of sugars and starches, like things like cereals, grains, all of the things that cause heart disease, basically, is what the USDA food chart is. And so there is plenty of data that's come out from the USDA that has said that items such as white bread and white flour, cereal, white rice, pasta, any of those sort of products are linked to early death, and specifically heart disease. And Clemson, what I did was I looked up the leading causes of death for Africans on the continent, in the United States, and in the Caribbean. And what we see is that in the United States and in the Caribbean, that Africans die from the same exact causes, the same leading causes, with heart disease being number one. Second to that is cancer. And each year it may fluctuate for Black people, whether or not heart disease is number one or cancer. But for most other races, cancer is the number one cause. And then for Black folk, it's heart disease. And on the continent, however, heart disease is the fifth leading cause of death. The fifth, which means that Black folk on the continent aren't really dying from heart disease. And what follows heart disease on the continent is stroke. Stroke is number 6. In the US, for Black people, that's 1 and 2. Both of those conditions are associated with diet. Nutritional racism, food oppression. We as African people in the US, and now also the influence is so heavy in the Caribbean, we are dying because of the food we are eating. And it's not only the food that we're eating, we're also dying because we're not getting the nutritional values that we need. And I will talk more about nutrition as opposed to food. So when you think of nutrition, you're thinking of things such as protein, fats, carbohydrates, vitamins, minerals. That's your nutritional value that the food is giving you. You eat the food, and then from those foods, your body receives these things nutritionally. We know that protein is used to help tissue growth and to repair and build your tissue. So we know that if there's a deficiency in a mother while she's pregnant in protein, that baby tissue growth isn't going to form exactly as it should. The same with fats. Fats gives the body its fuel and its storage reserve. And so if a mother isn't getting the right amount of fats while pregnant, that baby is not developing the right type of storage reserve. And what you will find is that storage reserve is actually somewhere, parts of where diabetes come from. So what happens in that womb has long-term implications for that child later in life. Another nutritional item would be carbohydrates. Carbohydrates gives the baby its strength and its energy. So if that baby did not get enough carbohydrates, and that baby is born and that baby doesn't have the strength and the energy to go through that birthing process, that baby can die. Hence a high infant mortality rate. Our babies are not getting the nutritional value they need in the womb. So they don't have the strength, the energy, they don't have the reserve, the fuel, the body formation to actually survive once they are born. And that is why Black babies have a higher infant mortality rate. And we know there's other causes such as poverty and socioeconomic status that is associated with infant mortality rate. But one of the things that we don't talk about that has the most effect is sort of this dietary deficiency that occurs in the mother's womb. And then ultimately you have babies that do not make it, or we have babies that develop smaller brains, or they have lower birth weights. And lower birth weights is associated with intellectual and mental and cognitive disability. And so, go ahead.
No, I didn't want to interrupt you. You will cover this in terms of what kind of diet should we be looking at to maximize the developmental potential of our children.
Great question. Great question, Clemson. And what we need to do is we need to be on an African diet. But what does that look like? So let me speak to what that looks like first for birth to 2 years old in our African babies, because it's most important during this time frame. So in the US, for us as mothers, I'm a mother, when our baby comes out of the womb, what the intent would be is that we would breastfeed. And what we know historically is that African women breastfed their babies, many of them. And if you could not breastfeed, a mother in the village was going to breastfeed that baby for you. So let me get back to the US. The intent in the US is for us to breastfeed. We don't have the knowledge, the awareness, and the education and the importance of breastfeeding. So most Black mothers put their children on some type of scientifically lab-created formula. Okay, the formula that is created is based on the nutritional value of a white child. So the amount of protein, vitamins, minerals, carbohydrates, fats, and all these other elements that make us human, that our bodies need, this formula is based on a white baby. So when Black mothers do not breastfeed and they put their children on these lab-created formulas, that baby from the day it's coming out of the womb is not getting the nutritional value it needs. What it should be getting is breast milk. And so a Black baby should get breast milk from at least birth to 6 months. And then at the 6 months time frame, what you would do then is start introducing that African baby to the African diet, which the base of the African diet. And so that child should be getting pureed beans, pureed peas, meaning the food has been blended down to where you don't need teeth or anything to eat it. It's just like baby food. It's mush. That baby should be getting pureed whole grains or an addition of like oatmeal into their diet. They should be eating pureed fruits, pureed nuts and vegetables. That is what that baby should be getting at 6 months. So you breastfeed till 6 months. You put them on this African diet from 6 months to 1 year old. And then when the baby is 1 year old, that baby can eat the same food that me and you eat. We just got to prepare it for them to be able to digest it because they can't necessarily chew it as we do. So to answer your question, an African baby from birth to age 2 should go breast milk for the first 6 months. Then they should start to be introduced into all of those base items and then introduced like cereal and oatmeal like we currently do now today. And then when that baby turns 1, that baby should not have any milk, cow milk at all. That baby should not have any dairy at all whatsoever. We as Black mothers are told by our pediatricians that our babies should go from formula all the way from birth to 1. And then when they turn 1, you put them on cow milk. And in between 6 months and 1, you just add in some cereal and some baby food from time to time. This is what America tells us to do as Black mothers with our babies. And this is not what the African baby needs. So that's what a diet would look like for an African child birth to 2. And this is most important because we need to develop appropriately between birth and 2 up to about 3 years old. Clemson, about 80% of the brain has formed by the time we're 3 years old.
Wow.
So if you don't get the nutrition that you need, if you're not feeding your brain cannot develop. And once you turn 3 years old to 4 years old, even if you want to go a little further, the brain's not doing too much more developing. It's just developing personality and higher level and complex thinking. But in terms of the person that me, you, and Darrell and others are, we are that person at age 3 or 4. And if we don't feed our brain, then our brain doesn't develop and we don't reach our full potential as Africans.
Now, when you look in our community, you will find it would be hard, very hard to find outlets, health food stores, and things of that nature where these foods that are necessary to maximize the growth and development of African children is really not there. Therefore, a revolutionary thing, and I'd like for you to speak to this, would be for African people, and these are the jobs that we need. These, by providing the things that we need, it builds a community that is more cohesive, more responsible to one another. It develops a consciousness to help us survive together. And it also engenders that responsibility for our self-development. So I would like for you to speak of that in terms of jobs to develop the very necessary basic nutritional dietary supplements. I said supplements, so maybe we should look at that, because I know Queen of Four has a green supplement that I use that's very, very delicious, and you really feel the energy and the health that you get after taking her super greens. It's all organic and so forth. But what is that potential for jobs and community development if we just feed ourselves? Can you talk about it?
Yes, that's awesome. That's really, really great. It's a couple of things I want to touch on there. The first thing is that mainly what the African diet consists of, before we get to the higher levels of the pyramid, I didn't talk about, but the top of the pyramid are your meats and your fats and your sugars and that stuff. But the base of the diet is what's important. Even though we have many, many, many Black mothers who are living in food deserts, that are food insecure and don't have access to really great quality food, the base of the African diet, you can find those items nearly anywhere nowadays. It's just fruits, vegetables, peanuts, things like that. Mainly, that's what we need: greens, yams, beans. So those things are available to us in the community in abundance in different forms. We just are not aware of the diet that we actually need. When our children wake up in the mornings, the first thing we give them to start their day is a bowl of cereal, which is a bowl of sugar and complex carbohydrates. That's what that is. That's what we give them to start their day. We don't give them anything to feed their brain. And so how does that translate into your question? The reason why the information I'm sharing with you today, and for those that are listening, why it may seem so foreign, is because there are literally 0 Black folk that hold positions in the U.S. that is in the space of food and nutrition. There was a article, a recent forum of Black nutritionists who were calling on the government and the communities to really understand that there is no voice at the food and nutritional level in this country of Black folk, and not just Black folk, folk of color in general. So some of the jobs that we need beyond our agriculturalists, which are traditional African style jobs, beyond growing our own food, beyond our farmers, we need those who are able to sit at the table of the USDA, or I cannot think of the name of the nutritional organization in the US. They're a separate name, and I can't think of them at this moment. But we need folks there. But another sort of problem with that, Clemson, is that it would be great if we had these folks in Africa and we all could just go back home, and the foods and the diet that we need is probably in our front yard growing or hanging from a tree or just somewhere near us. We don't even have to go to a brick and mortar grocery store to get what we need to survive as Africans if we were on the lands that the ancestors intended for us to be on. Everything that we would need nutritionally would be available to us in abundance, right? And so there's the one part of us all being where we should be, which is in Africa. The continent gives us what we need nutritionally. But since we're not there, we're stuck fighting white supremacy and asking them to allow Black nutritionists and food experts to be a part of the conversation. And so we need to get back to a sense of creating, developing, growing our own foods. That is the only way, or knowing exactly what foods have the nutritional value that you need for your child particularly. And I talk about this from the child and the mother perspective, because once that African child reaches about the age of 2 or 3, their developmental patterns start to be more on par with the European child, which means that the Black child has grew at the rate that it should have grown. And now it's just going to plateau just like anything else does. And so we need individuals that actually go to school and get this white knowledge, and then find ways to take this knowledge and compare it against what our African scholars have said about this same very topic, just like I'm doing, and then be able to share back to the community what we need to fix our diet. Dr. Sebi, he was too far on, and that's why they got rid of him, right? Dr. Sebi knew, Queen Afua knows that we are not eating a proper diet, and we need to change the way we eat in order to live longer. We are literally dying of food-related deaths. Black people are. We are dying from stroke, diabetes, high blood pressure. We're dying from heart attack. That's all associated with food. For everybody else, the number one cause for them typically is cancer. The African genetics protects us somewhat against these type of man-made diseases and causes that are formed. So I don't know if I answered your question fully, Clemson, but that is where we need our efforts to be in this moment, so that we can ensure that our Black mothers are receiving the nutritional value they need to even go through childbirth and survive. And we need to make sure that our Black babies are receiving the right nutritional value that they need, because we know that Black babies' developmental patterns are far exceed those of white babies. And the third thing, we as Black mothers have to stop putting our children on this laboratory created formula unless you're going to supplement it. And we need to breastfeed. And if we can't, we got to build community to where we have mothers that can breastfeed our babies the same way they breastfed the slave owners' babies. And the fourth and last thing that I'm going to talk about more in a second, if I have some time, is that the African body does not need dairy products at all. We do not need any form of animal milk or dairy in our bodies. The African child, which means every adult after, at the age of 2 years old, stop producing lactase. The African child at the age of 2 years old stops producing lactase, which means that we don't have the enzyme in our body for dairy or milk. Hence, more Black people are lactose intolerant than other race and ethnicities across the globe. So we have to really focus on this nutritional racism. The food oppression part of this conversation relates to this idea that Africans need dairy in order to get vitamin D. And we all know that the melanin in our skin and the sun in the sky gives us the proper amount of vitamin D annually that the body needs. Black people get that from the sun. White people, Europeans, they cannot get the required vitamin D annually that they need because they don't have melanin in their skin. So the sun doesn't provide that. So the USDA introduced white milk and dairy into the diet so that Europeans can get the recommended amount of vitamin D in their diet. But it is bad, bad, bad for the African body to consume dairy and milk.
Now, one of the things we do as a people, more than I think other people, is fast food. And fast food contributes, deadly to our being. Can you speak about fast food centers that always found in Black communities, and those same fast food outlets support racism? They give to the campaign of people like Donald Trump. They give in the millions of dollars to support white supremacy. And yet we give them millions of dollars. In fact, if Black people start buying that fast food, and I want you to speak about the damage that fast food does, both to our minds and our bodies. I mean, we eat so much fast food that we literally keep those businesses running and making millions of dollars to continue the oppression of our communities. Can you, and that'll be the last question I ask you, but can you speak on that before we close?
Yes, I can definitely speak to that. So what you're speaking to is the food oppression aspect of this conversation. I'm going to address a couple of things that you said. So there was a point in time when the United States, the USDA, basically, because I don't even know what the DNA stand for. The U.S. Department of Agriculture, I think, is what USDA stands for. But there was a time when the USDA in the late 90s, they had determined that milk, dairy, was high in saturated fat, and it was leading to a lot of causes of death. And so there was the use of milk slowed down tremendously. And so there was this over surplus of milk in the United States. And so they had to get rid of this surplus. What this surplus went to was the low-income Black communities. And they went to the low-income Black communities. It was pushed on them through WIC. If many of you know, when you get your WIC vouchers, the only milk you're allowed to get with your WIC vouchers is vitamin D, whole milk. I think you might be able to get 2% or 1%, but I definitely think it's whole milk. And someone in the comments can correct that if they have experience with WIC. That's the only milk they give you access to if you're on WIC. Second to that is many fast food restaurants in the late 90s, early 2000s, when the Got Milk campaign started. The Got Milk campaign started as a result of this surplus, and it was started by Black and brown celebrities to encourage Black and brown folk to drink more milk. And then fast food restaurants, and especially Domino's Pizza, you guys can look this up. Domino's Pizza came out with this triple cheese pizza during the Super Bowl, and they promoted it very heavily in the Black and brown community. And then other fast food industries, like Burger King, McDonald's, etc., they started to come out with all these different forms of cheeseburgers and etc. And so what happened was this over surplus of milk was pushed into the Black community in different forms, and it particularly in fast food. And so I say that to expand on what you're saying, Clemson, is that fast food is the worst food possible for Black and brown people. And anytime there's a surplus and we need to get rid of it in this country, it's going to go by way of fast food. And nowadays, fast food just don't have to be pull up and drive through, because the quality of food has significantly increased. Like the food that if we don't cook it and grow it on our own, it's not good for the African at all. It's not good. And to your point, these companies participate in white supremacy. That's why when the government know they have a surplus, they can come to these companies, offer them some kind of bailout if they create a product that uses a lot of whatever this harmful, damaging food is that the government is pushing onto us. Food oppression. So what? Yeah, so someone says you can now get 2% milk on WIC. I see that in the comments, but you still can't get no almond milk. You understand what I'm saying? They push this dairy on you. And so what I want to say to you, Jason, is that we have this food oppression that is occurring where Black folks are spending these large amounts of dollars on these fast foods that's not good. These companies are participating in white supremacy, and they are allowing the food industry to put these harmful items on their menu, make them look good, put a Black person on the front, and then they sell these foods to the Black community. I hardly ever see a fast food commercial and it's a white family hopping out their car to run inside to get these burgers and fries. And so we have to know these things, but there's a very small population in this country that knows these things that I'm sharing out. Like pediatricians, most of them don't know. Most parents don't know. Most doctors don't know. You want to know why? It's what Carter G. Woodson said. They're given a European education. Okay? They're not given an African-centered education. So what these European doctors are doing, and also Black doctors are doing, they are being denied this science. They don't know this science exists. They themselves are unaware that they're pushing on a developmental chart, a nutritional value onto African babies that is not the appropriate amount, and it's leading to high infant mortality rate, and it's leading to a high maternal mortality rate. And the only thing that we can do is get this information out in our communities and be the agriculturists that we are and the farmers that we are, and grow our own food and produce our own food. And if we can't do that, we need to know, like you said, Clemson, where can we get these supplements to supplement our diets to decrease the amount of later adult diseases that result from these poor diets during childbearing and during those first 2 years. And I just want to leave the conversation there, is that we have to get this knowledge out and do better to educate our mothers so that they are giving our young children what they need, so that by the time they're 3 or 4, they have healthy brain and bone development, and they're not susceptible to heart attack, stroke, diabetes, and all these things that you are genetically dispositioned to have. You're not genetically dispositioned to have them. The food that this country is giving you is what is producing these diseases. And I will end there if there's any questions.
Charles, I know you just joined us, but we wanted to make sure you got a chance to ask the last question, because I gave you the wrong time. I did try to call you this morning to let you know what time it is. So, Charles,
you started at 12.
Yes.
Okay.
So, if
I like you, firecracker. That's what I'm talking about. That sister energy. Go ahead, sister. Get on her.
Thank you.
She's talking about. Oh, you're welcome, sister. I told her when I was watching the video that you were on with the talking about the relationships. I like that sister spirit. That's what I'm talking about. But what she's saying, what she was just saying, from what I gather, you were talking about diet, Baba Clemson, and she's right. In the marketing community, they realize that Black people spend the most dollars of all the ethnic groups. So they do a lot of marketing to the African American community. That's why even though people say we have from $1.1 trillion, $1.3 trillion, I've heard $1.7 trillion spending power or income, we don't have wealth because we're always spending our money. We're always spending. We're not saving. We're not aggregating. We're not working as a collective to build a system in our community like Koreans have. The Koreans bought the health and beauty industry and pretty much took it over because they worked as an aggregate to build a system where they could buy in bulk, whereas African American health and beauty stores were buying individually. There's a lot of money when you have, there's a lot more that you can do when you aggregate your money and buy as a collective. But we have to get to that sophistication and stop spending. We don't own any of those things. And actually, even though we might be the creators, creating a lot of the products for these companies, we don't own any of the companies. And we're spending all of our money with these companies, making them rich. LVMH or something like that. That's basically Louis Vuitton in the luxury brands. We're making Louis Vuitton rich. We're making Michael Kors rich. We're making the Dairy Council rich. The Dairy Council is the one that got together that marketing campaign and targeted it towards Black folks, whether it's the milk commercials, whether it's the creation of cheeseburgers or any other milk products, whether it's Yoplait, and those little, remember the things that they have, sis, that the little drinkable yogurt things for kids that they put out like in the 90s. They started the little yogurt drinks that was like in a long kind of zippy straw thing.
Yeah, they were called Go-Gurts.
Go-Gurts. Thank you. Thank you. The Dairy Council is the council that does the marketing for the entire dairy industry. And they're the ones that put together these campaigns and target communities, target young people, target pregnant mothers, target Black people. So we have to be more cognizant of how we spend our dollars and what we eat. And right, a lot of these things, Black folks genetically are different than white folks. We're the primary people and everybody else comes off of us. So there's going to be, and those that are closest to us share some of the same traits. Like Asians are closer to us than Europeans are. So Asians get sickle cell or develop sickle cell just like Africans do because they're closer to us in the bloodline. But we are not genetically predisposed, as this what the sister was saying, to certain things. A lot of it, like she said, is our diet. And so we have to be more cognizant of what we eat. And anything that comes in a box or a can or a bottle is usually processed. So if you're trying to buy juice, if you're trying to get juice, rather, make your own juice. Go get the fresh fruit that has seeds, vegetables that have seeds, and put it in the juicer yourself. Because when you buy it in the bottle, even if it's the most nutritious fruit or most nutritious vegetable, when they put it in a bottle, they do something called pasteurizing it, which is heating it up to kill all the diseases. But when they're killing the diseases, they're also killing the enzymes and the other things that are in there that are nutritious. So basically, you just have a bottle of sludge. Now, it might be better than some a soda pop or something like that, but it's not much better. So make your own. I've started making my own, especially since my sister bought me my little ninja thing. I don't even drink juice a lot now. I drink water, and I'm doing a smoothie. So I almost had a smoothie. This morning, but I was running late because I was up until very late. So I didn't get. You would have seen me drinking a smoothie, Baba Clemson. But we have to be more cognizant about what we put into our bodies, but also what we put into our minds. What's going into our children's minds is not just garbage food going into our children's minds and bodies. It's garbage music going into our children's bodies. Our children are reciting these raps at 2 or 3 years old as soon as they can speak. But the raps are garbage. The raps are poison in their mind. The raps are poison in little brothers' minds against the Black women. The raps are poison in the little sisters' minds against the Black men. So we got to watch. Christians have this thing they call guarding your gates. Y'all heard that before? Baba Clemson, you're a minister. I know you heard that before. We have to guard our gates. We have to guard our hearts. We have to guard our minds. We have to guard our eyes and what comes through them into our psyche. We have to guard how we speak to each other. We have to be more serious because we are at war, as all of our elders tell us. As Dr. Khalid Muhammad always told us, we are at war. Sister Soldier always said, we are at war. I remember that from her raps. We are at war. The war is a psychological war. It's a physical war. It's a mental war. It's an economic war. It's a psychological war. We have to be more guarded. We have to, like this vaccine, Black folks are running and taking this vaccine. There's nothing in the medical history of America in regards to Black people that will lead us to believe America has our best interest at heart when it comes to medicine. So why are we trusting them to take this vaccine, especially since one of the panel that was supposed to approve it for the FDA, she refused, and this was a woman, she refused to endorse it, saying that it needed some more study before they released it to the public. That's the first one, I believe, the Pfizer one. So I'm not taking no vaccine. I'll wait a year, a month or something, 2 months, 3 months. You know, let me see if these folks grow gills or turn into reptilians, like what's that brother, the white brother Graham? He talked about the reptilians and all of that. Let me see if these folks turn into reptilians or something first. I'm not taking that vaccine unless I absolutely have to.
Yeah, I just want to comment on some things that you mentioned that I didn't get to, but really, really key and important. The food that we, like you said, like with the juice, they pasteurize it to kill the diseases, but then it ends up killing the nutrients. That happens too with us here at home, that we don't properly know how to cook our food. We will cook our food so hot on high heat on the stove, and really we're killing all the nutritional value and vitamins and what we're supposed to be receiving from our food. So along with what you said, we have to also be aware that we might not be getting the best quality food, and whatever nutrients and values that is in it, we're killing it when we cook it. So we also cook like Europeans, right? We store our food like Europeans. We use seasonings like Europeans. All of these are things that impact how much nutritional value that we can get from these foods. And so another point that you brought up in the grocery store, the only thing that I can tell everyone here on this YouTube today is, if you have to go in the middle of the store to get it, you don't need it. You need to shop in the grocery store on the perimeter. Fruits, vegetables, meat, and you can skip the dairy. But anything that's on the perimeter, the outside of the grocery store, that's what you need in your body. Anything that's in a package and down those aisles, you don't need that stuff in your body at all. Those are the things that's causing heart disease, diabetes, stroke, high blood pressure. It's in the middle of the grocery store. And so I ask each of you today, find those supplements. Go and look up Dr. Sebi, look at Cleaner, get, like some folks said in the comments, elderberry is really, really good. Sea moss right now. Stick to the fruits and the vegetables. Meats are okay, but you don't need a lot of meat in your diet. You need a lot of beans in your diet, a lot of nuts in your diet, fruits and vegetables in your diet, and greens, anything.
Beans, legumes, sprouts.
Yes, you need that in your diet, but really and truthfully and honestly, it is extremely detrimental if it doesn't happen while the mother is pregnant and in the first 2 years of that child's life. And I want to go back to that point. These things, if they don't happen then, that is where this genetic disposition comes from. And it's really an environmental disposition as opposed to genetic. If you don't get those nutrients and value then, if your body doesn't develop like it's supposed to, if your pancreas doesn't know how to filter out sugar like it's supposed to, if your arteries are going to clog up, all these things as a result of your diet, you of these diseases. And I'm going to end on these diseases that I'm speaking of. Many Black mothers, when they become pregnant, they have already succumbed to these diseases. And so we have Black mothers that are carrying our Black potential inside of diseased bodies. Okay. And so these diseases do somewhat pass down to our children when you think about genetic disposition in that way. So let me end on how I started. Brother Amos Wilson said that a large percentage of Black potential, it is destroyed in the wombs of Black mothers. as a result of the Black condition in America. Second time, a great percentage of Black African potential, it gets destroyed in these diseased bodies of our Black mothers as a result of this Black condition that we're in America.
I want to thank you. No, I didn't mean to cut you off. Were you finished?
I was asking, were you getting ready to close us out?
Yes, I was getting ready to close us out. And I want to thank you immensely, because this is what we have to do. We've got to talk and share and teach one another. After slavery, Black people, each one reach one, each one teach one. We could not read or write because it was against the law. But within the first 15 years of emancipation, we increased our ability to read and write over 50% within those 15 years. We went from 0 to something like over 50% of our people learned to read and write. And that's because each one tried to reach one, and each one tried to teach one. We taught ourselves mostly. So I want to thank Teachings today, and I want to thank Brother Charles for his input. And we look having another conversation on different subjects as soon as possible. So I want to thank our panel. I want to, I'm just happy. I'm just pleased. All right. Good day, everybody. Looking forward to seeing you again soon.
All right, Clemson, before you end this day, I just want to make clear, because I don't want nobody ragging me like they did our brother in Philadelphia, because they saw a mess in his house and all of that. There's a little raggedy piece of paper hanging on. Where's it at? Hanging on my wall here. I just want y'all to know that is my godchild's drawing. I didn't frame it, but when he was 2 or 3 years old, he drew that, and I came to visit, and he said, "Baba Chuck, I drew this for you." And so that's what that is. It's not a raggedy piece of paper hanging on the wall. So I don't want nobody dogging my apartment when this goes out to the world. But thank you for having me on. And sisters, to piggyback or veggie back on what our sisters saying, sisters, it's so important what you eat in your diet, especially when you're pregnant. That food that you're eating is not just for you, it's for that baby. So please, you got to eat the sister said, the things along the perimeter of the wall, the fruits, the vegetables. I wouldn't even say so much meat, the fish maybe, fish and chicken. We got to stop poisoning ourselves, and especially for you.
Chicken no more, brother. We can't even do chicken no more. They put so much estrogen in the chicken now. Men are developing breast.
Yeah, gynecomastia, I think is the name of it. My friend actually had that when I was in high school. He had to stop eating. Yeah. But we gotta be careful. Eat your seeds, eat your vegetables, eat your beans and nuts. Right. We gotta return back to our diet, at least our diet, from the South, because some of the things that we would eat if we were home or in the Caribbean are not available here. The tropical fruits as much anyway. And that's what we actually need to start getting. We need to get the mangoes, we need to get that breadfruit and those kind of fruits, coconuts, pineapple. I'm drinking pineapple juice now. Pineapple and pineapple juice is one of the most healthiest things you could drink. Black seed. Get the seeds or get the black seed oil. Put that in your diets, family. That's going to help with this immune system issues. The sister said elderberry, or somebody said elderberry. I can't see the comments because I'm not on the YouTube channel. But we got to start eating healthier, family, taking care of ourselves. Vitamin D3. Get that vitamin D3 in your system. That helps replace, because we're dark, we need longer time out in the sun. White folks go out in the sun 15, 20 minutes and develop enough vitamin D. because they don't have a lot of melanin in their either in their skin or in their nervous system. There's epidural, which is your skin, and then there's neurological melanin. And we have more of both, so we need more time in the sun to develop both. And us going out, like I'm here in New York, when I go out now, it's so cold. This like my head is even covered by my Yankees cap, so just my face is out. With your face out, you can be out 2 hours, 3 hours, and you're not getting enough. You're supposed to have your skin, let your arms be coated by the sun, let your head, the entire head be coated by the sun. But if we're not getting that, we need supplements. The vitamin D3 oil supplements. I get the one in the little tablets, little caps, the gel capsules, or vegetarian gel capsules, because I don't eat pork. Most gelatin is made from pork or beef. But you get the gelatin capsules of your supplements. Take them and it absorbs faster. When you get the little hard pills or the hard tablets, a lot of times your body doesn't even absorb, and that stuff winds up sitting in your gut. And for me, usually when I try to take the hard tablets or pills, it tries to sit on my chest. I don't even like those. I get liquid vitamins or gummy vitamins or vitamins and capsules. But you got to take your vitamins, family. Take care of yourself. And for going back to the sisters, it's important what y'all eat when y'all are pregnant, because you're not just eating for one, you're eating for two, or sometimes three or more if you're having twins. So take care of yourself, sisters. Guard your gates. And it's important, especially so for you sisters, because the sisters, you are the keepers of our culture. You are the keepers of our tradition. You are the ones that right Black men when we're going wrong. Historically, Hatshepsut and Zinger, the Kandakis and so forth, whenever the men have been too weak or kowtowing to and not keeping the culture and the principles, it's been our sisters that keep us on point, that put us back on point, that shame us into doing what the hell we're supposed to be doing. And so for sisters, I know there's a lot of weight on our sisters now, but you are the keepers of our culture, because you are the keepers of our family. You are the ones that can either keep our families intact with right ways and action, or can bring the family apart. And so when people say there's an attack on, and I was telling this to Barbara Clemson, people always say there's an attack on the Black man without saying there's an attack on the Black woman. There's an attack on the whole Black family. And now the next stage of it is that they're attacking Black women. They're putting our young sisters in jail. In school, we saw recently that they slammed the young sister down on the concrete down there, I think it was Florida, right? But that's been going on for the last 15, 20 years. There's an increase in incarceration and mistreatment of our young sisters in the school system. Even though our sisters are getting more graduating high school more, graduating college with advanced degrees more, they're still the most oppressed on the workforce. They're still getting the lowest salaries. But even though they made a whole lot of quote unquote advances, there's still a subjugation of it, because our sisters are the last bastion. You know how you have a war and then you have battles. There was a battle where they were focusing on Black men. There was a battle when they were focusing on young Black men. Now the battle is at the stage, and it's at the last gates. You know, you might have a few gates guarding the empire. The sisters are the last gate of our empire, and they're attacking our sisters strong. So the attack is not just on the Black man. You can't have an attack on the Black man and not be attacking the Black woman. So let's talk about that, and let's deal with that. Let's deal with sister has to hop off. Let's deal with Cardi B and the imagery being put out there to our young sisters of how they should behave and conduct themselves and think about Black men. Let's talk about our sister from the South, the other young sister, and this WAP business, right? That's an attack on the Black woman's psyche and the Black woman's development and how she views herself and her African man. And we need to be concerned with that. We need to show these. Y'all remember when I was in the 70s and 80s, when I was developing as a young person, the only people that you saw wearing some of the things I see sisters wear now were ladies of the night, prostitutes, or hookers, or people who were working in a strip club. Now women are walking around with this stuff on like it's okay. Now I'm trying to process it. It's hard for me to process. But we could talk more about that another time. I know Barbara Clemson has to go. Our sister has to go. But I just thank you for the opportunity to get on and even for these last few minutes and share with the family. So whenever you want me to on again, Clemson, I'll be ready to go. Or if you want to do extend the session now, I'm ready to go. But I thank you, and I thank my sister Evandra, Catherine. I love her spirit. I wish I'd have known she was on earlier. Even if I wasn't on, I would have been listening to her because I love her spirit. I love that fire energy. I love that even though she's very strong and people might say that's masculine energy, that's feminine energy because it's a corrective energy and that strength. She's I forget the name of the particular Orisha, but there's a female Orisha that's a hunter and a warrior that's fierce, and that's what the energy that this sister is coming with right now, and I love it. Keep going, sister.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Charles. All right, we are going to look for our next session, which I hope will be very soon. Peace and good